All right. Today's show, I want to catch up on the property tax situation here in the state of Florida, or the lack of. I'm a big fan of Governor Ron DeSantis. Many of you all know that. But I got to tell you something. I forget about the politics. I don't know what in the world we are waiting on to get a tax amendment that he wants, where he's basically one of the guys that started the conversation. I like where he's going, but I mean, a year and a half later, I'm coming up with a plan. If I sound a little critical, well, I have every right to be. I mean, and now we're going into June, maybe even hinted at July before there's a special session. And then I'll play the clip coming up where he even talked about how, well, we got to get it on by August, which means there's going to be challenges to it. And the problem, and I'm going to get with this conversation with Doug Wheeler in a moment here, Lindsay, is I want people educated. I want transparency. I want both sides to have the debate. I like the idea of doing something with the property tax, maybe replace it with the sales tax. Haven't had that conversation. Who's going to pay it outside of the homestead, the non-homestead? The businesses seem to be the group who I talk about all the time. They're worried they're going to have to pick up the tab. What about renters? And yet I keep hearing, I got a plan. I got a plan. You got a contentious state house who doesn't like the governor of and they're Republicans. I'm not convinced you're going to give him what he wants. And maybe, we'll talk about it in a moment. They may not have anything on the ballot this year.
Yeah, I mean that could be. I mean, time's ticking. We're almost to June, like you said. I don't know how this is going to be implemented.
Time keeps on ticking.
I know it does. And November is coming up, and when's early voting? That starts in October.
Yeah, Doug Wheeler, who is one of my favorite. He's the policy analyst, the chief policy analyst. How do you like that one, Doug?
Okay, I don't know if anybody else will like it, but I like it, sure.
Anyway, in the words of The Rock, it doesn't matter. Okay, but anyway, so Doug is a great free market conservative. James Madison.org. I love the James Madison Institute. Am I being a little too harsh? I mean, Lindsay brings up a good point. I mean, you're going to have to get the courts to approve it. There's going to be challenges. And then even if you don't touch and by the way, there's a school portion of your property tax people don't talk about. So we don't know if that's involved. And let's say that's left out, then fire and police. The liberal left and the school unions are still going to proclaim your schools are going to get hit. Listen, the governor 2 years ago was way ahead of the game, rightfully so, by the way, on the marijuana, the marijuana, and also the abortion debate. I don't know what in the world are we waiting on. I need people to be educated because, as your polling data has shown, Doug, it's an ultimate high for the elimination of property taxes. But when the conversation of essential services comes in, that number falls well below the passing of the 60%. Again, that's just me, Doug. I got to get people educated on this issue.
Yeah, look, I think that's a lot to take in, and there's a lot of right there. I think, look, you're first of all, let's take this assumption. The people of Florida are ready. They are asking for property tax reform among many other affordability issues that the state faces, right? And so this is certainly one of them. And so we know they want some form of property tax reform, and we know that they want to make sure that it doesn't gut out all their schools and local, essential services. So that discussion was started, like the governor late last year. I believe he does have a plan. I think there are some, tactics involved in sort of keeping that close to the vest for now, somewhat strategically, right? It gives him a little playroom to negotiate as needed, right? So that it still looks like a win. We've talked about, there are some thoughts that his plan involves a high level exemption, if you will, a super exemption, right? And we know the House did pass something similar to that. So the path is there for that. We would respectfully offer an alternative proposal, and we can get into that, later in the discussion. But there are problems with an only homesteaded exemption, and you got into some of those, Ed. It is surely going to, pass the buck, if you will, to non-homesteaded properties and businesses.
Doug, you said a moment ago, and I get it politically. The governor's going to may use certain things for what he wants for the leverage. Like what? I mean, how many days? I mean, are we talking? Is 3 days enough? Is 4 days enough? Is a week enough? I know we've had a year to talk about this, and both sides to me have dropped the ball, even on the state house side when they were talking about having this grand town hall throughout the summer of last year. Never happened, by the way. And we ramrod everything through. Are we talking about 3 or 4 days of this discussion? And and I agree with you that they're looking at a higher exemption. No one's talking about non-homesteaded property, which is more than homestead. No one's talking about business owners. What about those in some of the rural counties? I mean, how are you going to fund them? Is it one of these where you think the conversation that I just brought up will happen in a special session, or is it, well, we got to pass the bill first, then we can deal with everything else afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, this is a unique time with this governor and the speaker and this president and some off-field issues that we continue to see bubble up. So it's hard to say. I think it could be appropriate that you're not putting this discussion ahead of the budget, right? So they're in the middle of that, and I'm not sure that's going all that well, beyond the obvious that we're here for a special session, right? Even now, I think we're still some issues. So perhaps appropriately, the governor has decided to wait for that. But that clock is ticking, you're right. And so you could end up with a very compressed discussion. And certainly, if they're in agreement on this super exemption, I think the Senate would be amenable to go along with that if something could get worked out and they can figure out who's going to get the credit for it. And that could very quickly be moved through the process and onto the ballot.
Lindsay, with the schools that you run, think about this conversation. They see you on TV, they hear you on the radio show, and the conversation, let's say, and we don't know yet. I'm just putting I'm putting the cart before the horse. So you've got your county and your local county. You've got a city property tax, and you have your other property tax, a county, but you got to pay a school portion of that as well. And we've heard, I think one of the bills that has been approved by the state, or not the state, but at least by the state house, doesn't touch that. But if the governor comes out and says, no, we're actually going to include that, okay, I got news for you. When you're done after school, that's going to be the biggest flipping debate leading up to the November election. Lindsay, what in the world's going on? Are you guys going to remain open? They act like that. I mean, the sky's going to fall. That's pretty much what the attitude of the question is going to be.
Listen, this is a complicated issue, and I'm very curious to see what the plan will be. But there's no way in the whole world that they would ever touch and go down in funding in schools. I mean, that would be career political suicide. That would wipe out all of Governor DeSantis's 8 years and the track record that he's had and the legacy that he wants to leave behind. There's just absolutely no way. So there's got to be a replacement, and I'm very curious to see what that is. But I do agree with Doug. I think that there's a lot of egos out there that they want to take credit,
That's right.
which classic in Tallahassee that would happen, and Washington, let's be honest. And so there's all these egos, and then on top of it, this is just so complicated. Like, how are you going to replace all of this revenue? And so I think the longer that you delay it, there's less risk for this plan that the governor wants to roll out to be, just tarred and feathered. Yeah. However, there's also less time for you to get the people involved and out and excited about it and pushing this on the ballot.
Doug, what is, Lindsay brought up some good points. I don't think the governor's going to include that as well, but I know you're a policy guy, but follow me for a political question here. You've got members of the state house that just aren't fans of the governor. I mean, the governor says, hey, they don't want to go back to their districts and tell them, listen, I think some of these guys on their way out don't care. That's just my attitude. So, we always talk about Vegas odds, the over and under, 60-40, 50-50. I mean, that number could change in a few weeks down the road. Is it still a 50-50, 60-40 leaning that something's going to get done on the ballot this year?
I think it's better than that, to be honest with you. I've had conversations there. There's going to be something, and certainly, we're not, opposing, a super homestead exemption phased out, however you want to do it. I think I would agree with both of you. The schools are off the table. That's not even an issue. But But I think we're just, we would not oppose that, but we do acknowledge that there's complications to that, right? And we've talked about some of those. And so I think, that's why we keep coming back to the James Madison Institute about a levy cap, because so many of the issues, Lindsay brought them up, you've brought them up, I've brought them up, right? The carve outs, the shift, so much of that gets eliminated with a broader universal approach that the levy cap brings. That said, I continue to hear that something will get done and something will be on the ballot. And that may play into the fact that it's a very compressed discussion, right? Because of the time they get together, that they come to an agreement, and that's what it is. And it's passed in 2 days and they're back home and it's on the ballot.
What is there a conversation going on? I haven't heard this. I think it's in a good way. It's wishful thinking. I wouldn't have a problem. Is there any kind of a conversation where they may try to kind of an offshoot of what you talked about, like a levy cap? They may try to put something involved that will limit on what the local municipalities can spend or taxes. Is there any conversation about that?
Yeah, I actually had a legislator reach out to me this week asking about getting into drafting with some sort of levy cap type language. And I know there's been an interest. There's been some language in the past on that. I think, look, wherever they end up, and we're not trying to put down, any sort of other ideas. We just feel like this sort of rose to the top because of the way it's formulaic. It addresses the small and rural county issues that so many legislators are concerned with. And I just got to tell you, I think everybody, I'd be curious to flip the question to you two. If they don't get something done, the governor calls a special session and says, I want the legislature to address property taxes, and I want them to do this, and nothing gets done. I don't know who that hurts worse. I really don't. That's a black eye for everybody, but only a certain group of them have to go home and face re-election. So
let me go back a year and a half ago when they had that immigration bill on Facebook. I mean, they beat the living crap out of the Republicans. Governor he was up here. But I remember all of the Republicans kept saying, this is the bill that Donald Trump win. This is the bill. I mean, that was kind of a nice little argument among MAGA community on this whole issue. And then you saw what happened with that. I'm kind of with you on this one. I'll get Lindsay's take. I don't know. I think that if it's going to be pennies on the dollar, I have said, I know you've also advocated as well, that, hey, if it's going to be minuscule, kick the can down the road for another year. I'd have a special election in 2027 or 2028 on this issue. Why? It's like Social Security, Lindsay. If I know that I can wait a few years and get a bigger return on my check instead of at 62, your advisor would say, you're in good health. Wait till you're 65. You can get more money in your back pocket. If we do something now, we're all going to brag about like it was like we cut $2 and, oh, this was great. Tax reform. Squat gets done. Now you got to go back again to the amending process, which can be a major pain in the rear end. I'll tell you what, I would. I'll tell you what, I'll take the wait any day of the week, Lindsay, until something significant gets done, not just on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 3 or 4.
And I don't know. I think when you have the supermajority, you have a governor who's been pushing this. I think you just got to go for it. And I don't believe that the governor wants to end his 8 years on this note, on a bad note. So I think he will push to the very, very bitter end to get this done and have this stamp at the end of his term. So I think it's going to get done. I agree with Doug. I think that there's going to be last minute push for this. And I think that all the information is going to come out that we need for a great plan, Lord willing. But I don't think that the right call would be to wait, because we're not guaranteed a supermajority and we don't know who the governor is going to be. So this might not be on their priority list, which could be a real problem.
Doug, quick question. And I was talking to several of the property appraisers, and they have said in Florida that your school portion of the property tax is sometimes, and I don't know if it's every county, Doug, you may know this more than I, but in several counties, that's the biggest chunk of the tax they spend on the property is for the schools. So, I mean, the question is, how can you really have property tax reform, but not touch of the school portion as well? Is that a fair argument?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's part of the problem when you try to put this, one size fits all approach, right? That you get into some counties, it's going to be a big deal. Some it's not. Look, a $500,000 home in Miami versus Perry, right? We know that difference and how that's going to impact things. I'll tell you, and I hate to keep pounding on the levy cap, but levy cap can first of all be done statutorily, right? So you could take the entire constitutional amendment process out. They could literally come here in July, pass a bill, and have it be in effect. Okay, and in addition to all the other things that it does. Now, is it perfect? No. You mentioned, could you cap spending? Capping spending is great if you could get something like that passed. You want to talk about getting the locals, counties, and cities riled up, right? Talk about capping their overall spending. But when you're capping a significant portion of their collections, then in a way you are controlling that spending, right? You're certainly pedaling that back a little bit so that it's on pace with growth, right? And your metrics and the economic realities of what your community can actually do to afford it, as opposed to just organic increases year after year after year.
Doug, if you can get something done in the property tax, and I've always said government doesn't need a diet, government needs a gastric bypass. That's what they need. Does it force the local cities and counties to control? By the way, the school board's a whole nother entity of where we need to doge them. That'd be my first one before I went to the counties, but that's a different story. Does it force them to cut their spending, or does something like your bill, which probably would do a better job? I mean, in theory, if you've got more people moving in all these communities, and not everybody's using all these government services, let's be honest here, okay? But in the theory, it's like a group health policy. More people come in, keeps the cost down and stabilize. We're not seeing that in Florida, okay? Many of these cities run by Republican and Democrats just spend. If they controlled their spending, the problem with that argument is people would say, well, that would translate into a property tax cut. Yes and no. The problem is they're going to put it in a rainy day fund, and whoever knows what that'll be, like a brand new sports stadium. So what is a better way to control the spending on a local level then?
I'm going to get ahead of it by controlling the collections, right? I'm going to control the spending by controlling how much they have to spend. And so with that levy cap, what you've said is, listen, you're going to be able to grow your collections this much year to year. And if your millage rate is above that collection, then you have to cut your millage rate and you have to return the money back to the taxpayer. And so, the communities that have been more egregious with their property tax revenue growth, yeah, they're going to feel a bigger pain when they have to roll that rate back. But
Right.
Those that have been responsible and grown with their community are going to be more in line, and there's no drastic cut.
Is there a conversation, which I don't have a problem with, that says, okay, we're going to cut the property tax, now how we're going to replace it? I'm hearing from slightly bigger city Republicans that have said, we wouldn't mind the increase in a sales tax as long as the tourist will pay for that. Is that becoming a popular notion right now, maybe to look at that?
I don't know that that's gained. I know that was popular initially. And then I think the more we looked at that, right, a lot of folks are going to talk about that's very regressive and that's just merely a shift, right? So then what are we really doing for the taxpayer if we're just cutting their property taxes but raising this tax? That's not a tax cut. That's a tax shift. And so it's a complicated, you got to get into remissions and things like that. I think could be actually making a problem worse, certainly more complicated, certainly for your small businesses, again, on the remittance of sales tax funds to the state. So initially, we did hear a lot about that. I'm not hearing that that's gaining steam again. That's not to say that's not, but certainly wouldn't be something we would support.
Well, I mean, you got to replace it.
You don't.
What? No, Doug. Tell me these cities aren't going to cut their spending. Can we just acknowledge that? They're not going to do it.
If they don't, then they're going to have to be, it'll be more transparent when they have to go out and raise taxes somewhere else, right? Because part of the problem with the property tax, right, this thing, it comes on your mortgage statement. People don't even see it. It just becomes part of your monthly mortgage. And you don't even realize it's gone up by this much. And so I think if you can control that, and if they do want to go and raise their local option sales tax, well, they're going to have to vote, or take that to the community to do that. And so at least if they do go find substitute sources of funds, it's in a much more transparent manner that the community is going to be aware that they're doing it versus just having this organic growth year over year because of property values.
That's fair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think that's fair. I think the more transparency, the better. And you're right, Doug. I mean, in everybody's mortgage, you don't really even notice year to year. You don't see it. It's kind of like teachers with the teachers union. Those dues get taken out. Same with firefighters and everything. The dues from the union just get taken out of the paycheck automatically. So you don't even see that that's coming out. When people actually have to write a check, like stroke a check to the IRS, right, for their April 15th deadline, that's a heck of a lot more painful than not knowing it all. And kind of, everybody's busy. You don't have time to, keep up with all this stuff. You have kids and you have your business, you have your job, you're involved with the church, whatever. So I think it's actually more transparency is better, and people get mad and actually start raising questions.
Doug, I've seen my years as a reporter here in Florida where we pushed for certain exemptions that it's like the marijuana. It got a lot of support, but it didn't get the 60%. We've seen that happen. Are we talking about one? And sometimes they put 2 or 3 measures on the ballot. Is this one going to be 1 or 2 measures?
I mean, they could, if it's what we're talking about, the super exemption phased out, that could certainly be one. The governor's kind of expressed that I don't think they want to put 2 options, right? Like this or that, and put that out there. I think the governor's already kind of disregarded that when the House came out with 9, right? To be fair, that's not 2. But so my guess would be the focus is going to be to come up with one concept and have it be one amendment to be voted on for the governor and everybody else to try to focus on getting passed.
Lindsay, Doug, and Lindsay comes on my radio show all the time. Doug was on with us this week, or last week, I should say. And I said, hey, if this passes, and I think if this had gotten the ballot earlier, it'd probably be even more. But I think this will be the most expensive ballot, I assume, if it gets on earlier, that this state will ever see of pros and cons on one side. And it's going to be very interesting and just because I mentioned a name, it's not a put down on some of these people. I know who some of these people are, but the Democrats are going to oppose it. You're going to have some Republicans oppose it as well. Let's be totally blunt. You got the League of Cities. I get along with them. The League of Counties, Doug, pension groups, school districts, the unions. But the question is who's going to be in favor of this? I mean, what are the sheriff's associations going to be against this because of fearful that pensions may be cut? Where do some of the other where does the real estate community come down? Is it more of them of the opposition than there are in supportive of the property tax? Yeah,
there could. It's going to depend on what the outcome is, right? Because certainly if it's as the governor has proposed, then I think you will certainly miss the support of, if not engage the opposition of, the business community. And I think rightfully so, because they will be the number one target of that shift that we've all talked about.
Lindsay, he just brought up a good point. A lot of business owners I know, very conservative, and they love the governor. They support the president. But Doug's got, and Doug's analysis is dead on. Is out of all of these groups because right now, not really, we had Councilman Rory Diamond out of Jacksonville on the radio show this week, and some other, and I said, is this discussion been a discussion at they have all these public comments, Lindsay, at a council meeting where you could talk about Area 51 and AI data centers when the debate that night's about property taxes. And he says nobody's been talking about this at all, which kind of, I'm sitting here going, does nobody even care? And I will tell you, but Rory did say this, and I'm hearing this, the only group that's focusing on this, Lindsay, it's really kind of like Doug alluded to, are business owners. And they're very hardcore conservative. And they pay the bills, and they sit back and go, here we go again. We're going to get shellacked. Who's looking out for us, Lindsay?
That's true. Well, I mean, unfortunately, business owners, they work 24/7. As
Yeah.
someone who was a business owner, I understand this. And so they don't have time to show up to city council city council meetings and stand in line for an hour and make a public comment. They're busy dealing with HR issues, paying their taxes, dealing with their inventory, whatever it is. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense why business owners are not showing up at these meetings.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a kind of like an underground support for this in a lot of different ways. It's just we're the the majority, the silent majority that are out raising their kids and
Right.
making money in their businesses.
And you want to know something? If cities like Tampa and Orlando, South Florida, Jacksonville would stop blowing a boatload of money without trying to bring in the business committee for their daggum sports stadiums, who, by the way, just if you look at the numbers, never have gotten in the black. They've never made dollars for the city. I mean, listen, the Cato Institute's done. We've covered it at Florida Daily. Well, it's a cultural benefit. Hey, so is going on a cruise spending $5,000. But if you ain't got the money, it doesn't work out. And we're spending $500 million on all this.
Ed, I love you a lot. I don't want to pay for your cruise. Neither.
Yeah, but I want to pay for your football stadium.
Well, that's my point. That's my point.
I know. So, Doug, that's what they're all like, oh, we're strapped. I mean, you flipping people got millions of dollars that you from COVID, that you renovated golf courses that wasn't even COVID related. And they're all claiming that they don't have enough money, Doug. They had more money coming in. They were told if you take all the money and blow it. They did it. Now they got no more. Again, as the governor's pointed out, which you pointed out, we pointed on the radio show, how in the world do you go from pre-COVID from 32 billion to 60-something billion and still claim you don't have enough money with more people moving in, more tourism coming in?
I know how you do it. How you do it. You fund recurring programs with non-recurring funds.
Explain that to the audience in layman's terms real quick with it.
Well, because that's just what they've done with all the COVID money, right? They brought all this federal COVID money down and they created these programs and they added all these personnel, and school boards added personnel, and all these people brought in all these, these programs with this COVID money. And then the COVID money kind of went away. And so instead of making hard decisions like businesses and families are having to do across the board with affordability issues, they chose to just keep taking money from taxpayers through property taxes, and don't get me started, but impact fees and permitting fees, and it goes on and on and on. So, Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ed.
And oh my gosh, we got so many taxing districts in Florida. Go look at. By the way, Lindsay, you said something where that people don't follow the mortgage. Nobody. Go look at what you pay on your property taxes, mosquito control, St. John's Water Management. You know what I need before we go? And I know I'm giving a shameless plug. I don't know any of these people, but it's like an Italian name. Like you got these people run for office called Matt the Welder. You ever seen or Bob Ed the Cutter? I want to like Larry the Lizard. Like the in the good movie Goodfellas. All these names. I want. You know what? If I don't know, I get a little passionate. I get a little over passionate because it's not this difficult to fix problems out there. The problem is, Lindsay, it's no longer from the left. I'm battling my side.
Yeah, which is terrible. We're supposed to be the side of fiscal responsibility, and instead it's a uniparty in a lot of different ways, which irks me to no end. Yeah.
Doug, I don't even use unibathrooms. That's why I don't like the uniparty. So there you go. All right, Doug Wheeler, policy analyst. I'm glad you came on today from the James Madison Institute.
You too.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime.
Thanks, Doug. We'll see you later, brother.
Doug's the best.
I get peeved.
Oh, I do really too. No, I do too. You stand for, you run on a certain platform, people give you money, they vote for you, they wave signs, they wear the t-shirts, they knock on doors, and then they get, it's really disgusting.
Why don't most voters get just as ticked off as I do?
They don't pay attention, Ed, because if they did, they would get mad.
I got more people that get pissed off of,
losing a football game.
Yeah.
They don't even play it.
Yeah.
They don't even play on the team.
Yeah. Or Amazon's or an AI data center. Okay, that's fine. But when it comes to doing something about your taxes, and everybody's, I mean, they all love the, itch and complain on my radio show. I get it. And, maybe sit across on Facebook and type something in. But when it comes to these council meetings, I mean, parents can make the time. You got time to go to your kids' event. You got time to go to a council meeting. And as Lindsay says, kick the crap out of, kick them out of office. But, Republicans complain a lot, my party, and the people that cause the problems are people in my party, and we don't kick them out. So as bad as the Democrats. All right, Lindsay Randall. I'm glad everybody watched this today. Don't forget, go to Florida Daily Show on YouTube. Subscribe. Again, I tell everybody, when we say the word subscribe, it doesn't mean you got to pay for anything. Just subscribe to it. And you can read about all of our stuff and watch us also, the Florida Daily Show at floridadaily.com. All right. We'll talk to you all later on.